Hello my friends and welcome to 7 True Scary Stories from Reddit. There's nothing like a good creepypasta to keep us up at night from fear of the unknown, but perhaps that scary unknown is closer to us than we thought, and is quite real. Here are some accounts from real-life experiences told by Reddit users. My grandmother swore by the story till her dying day. It was during the war in London and my dad was a baby. She was bombed out of her house and was staying with a friend. The friend had set her up a room on the top floor. Anyway, she was taking my dad upstairs to bed when a figure materialized on the stairs, telling her not to sleep in that room tonight. She noped back downstairs and told her friend that she and my dad were sleeping in the sitting room that night. Her friend was annoyed but agreed. That night a bomb exploded near the house and the roof caved in, right on top of my dad's cot. He would have been killed. Okay, so this happened to me last summer when I was back at my parents' house during the holidays. It was around 3 a.m. and I was in my room on my computer when I got a call from my sister. Now that was already a little bit weird since my sister's room is right down the hallway from mine and she could have just come in my room. I went to pick up the call and it ended as soon as I reached my phone. I figured that she wanted to speak with me, so I got up and I went to her room. As soon as I reached her door, she started screaming that someone was in the room with her, so I busted in and of course nobody was there. After she stopped crying, she told me that she woke up and saw a dark shadow just centimeters from her face, and that's when she screamed. So I told her that she called me. She tells me that her cell phone is not in her room and that she was sleeping. Sure enough, her phone is actually downstairs in her purse. The weird part is that I have the log of her call on my phone, but she doesn't. Never managed to explain this one. When we first moved into the house I grew up in, I used to hear things calling my name from the opposite end of the house. Like, I would be in my room playing with Legos or something, and I would hear my dad call my name from his room, so I'd go to my parents' bedroom and I'd ask what they wanted, and they'd always tell me that they never called my name. Being a little kid, I honestly started to think that they were playing a joke on me, because this happened about once every couple days. Well, one night it happened and I went to ask what they wanted like always, but right as I stepped into their room, I heard my mom's voice calling me from the living room, which is all the way on the other side of the house. It was that exact point I knew no one was tricking me, because I was looking at both my parents sitting in front of me. I kinda kept this to myself until my brother was diagnosed with partial narcolepsy. One of the symptoms of narcolepsy is apparently oral hallucinations. So I thought maybe I had it too, went and got myself checked. Completely fine. So I have no idea what was calling my name all those years. And I still hear it at night whenever I come to visit and stay over. When I was about 7, my 2 brothers and I were playing in an area that was used as an unofficial motocross place. We decided to dig a tunnel for some reason, being the extra smart guys we were. It took a few hours to dig about 6 feet and 2 feet high. I was right up at the face when suddenly, the tunnel collapsed. It was all dirt and no supports. My world went instantly black and hot. By hot, I mean furnace hot. I couldn't move a muscle from the weight of the soil completely enclosing me. I started to really panic, as you do. Everything started to turn red, which I guess was the blood being forced into my head. Every breath was getting harder as the soil constrained me more and more. Even though my hands were near my face, I couldn't move my arms to clear the dirt around my head. And also started breathing in dirt, which made me cough and made me contract my stomach, and then I couldn't draw breath at all. This isn't what made me panic, though. The total darkness turning red with incredible heat made my young mind think I was going to hell. I didn't know how long I was buried, but it seemed like an eternity. Suddenly, I felt something grab onto one of my feet. My brothers had been frantically digging through the collapse to pull me out, and managed to reach me and pull me out just in time. We never told my parents. I just went home and got hosed down. When I was about 10, all of my cousins and siblings were over, about 10 of us there. The parents and grandparents were out for an adult dinner, so it was just the kids sitting around watching a few movies, when all of a sudden the house shook and there was a large flash coming from the backyard. It felt as if a bomb dropped. We all heard and felt and saw it. As a pack we ran to the hallway. The eldest cousins in the group debated on calling the police, but opted to call the parents. After a few minutes, we gained our courage and ventured out into the living room again, this time with weapons, just in case. After a half hour with no other issues, my parents came home and thought we were insane. There was nothing wrong with the backyard, and no neighbors reported anything. It's been about 10 years, and we still talk about it, trying to figure out what it was. That's been the scariest thing to happen to me by far. I used to live in China back before I moved to the US. I was about 12 when it happened in China. My friend used to live in those apartments that look like high-rises, but were a little smaller. Anyway, in order for us to go to his apartment, we had to either take the stairs and walk up 10 stories, or take the elevator. One day I had a sleepover at his place and we went to get the new Pokemon movie at like 6 in the evening. The store was 2 blocks away. He always talked about how creepy the apartments he lived in are because very few people lived there. I swear I've only seen like 3 other people in the apartments and I was there all the time. Anyway, on the way back, it started to rain pretty heavily. We ran to his apartment and took to the elevator. The elevator creaked and moaned on the way up and suddenly stopped. The lights in the elevator went out and it was pitch black and silent. The only thing we could hear was the muffled sounds of the rain and thunder. We, being kids, started to panic and scream and cry. We were there for about 2 minutes when we heard a loud thud on top of the elevator. When we heard light footsteps walking on the elevator, we got quiet and looked up at the vent facing upwards in the buildings. Our eyes had gotten used to the dark, so we could make out a few objects. The footsteps stopped, and it was dead quiet again. My friend nudged me and pointed up towards the vent. What I saw probably was the scariest thing I've ever seen, and I'm 20. I had never been this scared in my life. I looked up, and I could make out a face looking down through the vents. It looked like an ape, like a really human-like ape with human facial features, if that makes any sense. It was staring down straight towards us. I don't know if it was our imagination distorting the face of a monkey or an actual demon-looking thing, but it literally made me freeze in fear. I'll try to draw the picture and post it. But anyway, we started screaming. I will admit, I pissed myself. It still gives me chills thinking about it. It started banging on the elevator roof. It didn't scream or anything, just made noises by banging on the roof. Then it took off and we could hear the footsteps running to the side of the elevator roof. Then the power came back on and the elevator started moving again. We never took that elevator again. It seriously traumatized us. Edit, the user drew a picture of what he saw, and I will include it right now here. I always seem to get to these threads when my story will surely be buried, but here it goes. When I was 13, my grandmother was dying of cancer, and my mother and I stayed at her house and took care of her during her last few weeks. One night, at 3 or so in the morning, my sister ran into my room and told me that my grandmother, who by this time was completely bedridden, had entered my mom's room, woke her up, and then walked out of the room. There was no creepiness at the time, and just a genuine concern for what my grandmother could possibly be doing up at 3 a.m. when she was literally days away from dying. We ran into her room, and sure enough, she had passed away. Obviously, given the shock of my grandmother dying, my mother and I didn't sit around chatting about how weird the whole experience was. But months, and perhaps even years later, I asked her about that night, and she has no memory of telling me that my grandmother was up and walking around the house. She doesn't even remember what woke her up or why she woke me up. Gives me the shivers just writing it. All of these stories were taken from a thread on Reddit. If you want to check out any of these or other true scary stories, the thread link is in the description below. That's all the time I have for today, my friends. I hope you're having a wonderful day or evening. I'm Amori. Now listen to the spooky tunes. A friend had set up a room on the